Hello, I'm Dr. Lydia Istomina. I'm the pastor at the First United Methodist Church in Independence, Missouri. This is my last sermon out of the series What If? And the title is What If We Followed Jesus with Our Hearts? First of all, I wanted to remind you that this particular message is based on Mark 12, verses 38-44. And I will have to look back and forth because I'm myself operating this studio and also showing slides on the screen. So, Mark 12, verses 38 through 44, very contrasting message about those teachers who like to walk around flowing robes and be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, and also how the scripture says they devour widows' houses and make their lengthy praises. And then also, of course, Jesus looks down at those teachers, and instead he tells a story about the widow's offering. And we will talk about it more. If you're not familiar with that, that widow, a poor woman, gave more than she actually had for herself. She had everything given what she had for herself for a day. Very little money, but Jesus praised her. And that's what I want to address this question. What if we follow Jesus with our hearts? Because very often when we read the Bible and people take it as, yes, I have to give everything away. And then, of course, we have a bunch of questions about our community today. So we will talk about that, about homelessness, about people who are in need, poverty. And so, and that's how striking is this contrast between teachers who do that for show, and then Jesus is sitting and watching people putting money into the offering. And then he notices how people who are well off, they put, like he says, many rich people threw in large amounts. Wonderful, very, very honorable, and very praiseworthy. But also, then he compares with the poor widow. My questions to you today are challenging. First of all, what does it mean to follow Jesus with our hearts? Do we not supposed to love our God with all our minds, with all our hearts, and with all our souls? Yes, this is the greatest commandment. And actually, this particular reading today in chapter 12 is all about emphasizing again the importance of this great commandment, that law of loving our God and loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. So let's review this all, and also. Of course, as always, I challenge my church members and those people who watch our series of sermons or individual sermons. What I wanted to focus today on the widow who gave all she had. And of course, does it mean to give recklessly? Like, oh, whatever I have, I just give. I don't care about tomorrow because God will provide. Don't we all say that, people who believe? And that brings memories of my grandfather, who also believed in this biblical verse that you need to give away your last shirt. And the Bible actually says if you have two shirts, if you have two tunics, you give one to the one who doesn't have clothes. But my grandfather was always giving his last one, literally sometimes. And that gave me a lesson when I became a pastor in Russia. Of course, I followed my grandfather's example, and I will give you an example later in the sermon what it led to. And also today I will review the Hillel's morals and ethics. And that will be closely related to those teachers. If you remember the previous slide that we had about those teachers in flowing robes walking around, he was one of those, but not of those who tried to show off and just having said lengthy prayers. He was the one who was known for his golden rule. Actually, he is the one who phrased and established this golden rule: do not do to your neighbor what you do not want to be done to you. So we will be introduced to his saying on this particular matter later. And so Hillel also was known as an ethics teacher. He was a rabbi, and he gave a principle that will apply to my message today. So let's review the scriptures and the widow's offering and Hillel's wisdom as a promise. So we just heard the scriptures, and then after that we hear his wisdom. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm not for others, what am I? And if not now, then when? So one more time. And in our sanctuary, we recited it together. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And if I'm not for others, what am I? And if not now, when? And in a way, it continues one of my sermons when I preached about good and quick or cheap, because this is how we Christians do ministry, and we do good, and because God calls us to do good. So let's review now a story that applies to Hillel's wisdom and the self-examination. First of all, when we think about following Jesus with our hearts, it is very important to recall the meaning of the heart in the ancient world. So there are different versions of our understanding of heart in the ancient times, because now we just know that this heart is the organ. It's actually the muscle that never stops, works very hard, and it's important to keep our hearts in a good condition, that we try to exercise and eat well, and so to live longer, right? And so, but then back in the ancient time, it was different, because people believed that heart is the center of our bodies, and not just the bodies, but the center of our being. And for instance, ancient Greeks believed that the heart was the center of the soul and the source of body heat. It's a core from where our emotions come, and also how we understand everything, almost like not with the brain, it's like a part of the brain, how we make decisions. In a very similar way, biblical times, if you review biblical times, the heart was the center of intellectual and emotional life, and was where people made choices and felt emotions. You see, like when we say, my heart was broken. So that's it literally came from the Bible, that's verse. So my heart was broken, because this is where all the emotions are. This is where our intuition is. That's how people believed, and they applied it to the heart. So imagine now, when we think about following Jesus, and when we jump into this passionate urge to help, and to feed, and to clothe, and I just always thought of myself when I started ministry, as I said, when in the preschool that we started in our church, my son was at that time 6 years old, and one of the parents came to me, and she complained that she doesn't have any boots. And this is winter, and this is cold. And I'm sure you have the same feeling when somebody comes to you and say, oh, I don't have money, and then you have maybe like $10 in your wallet, or God forbid you have 100 back then, right? So now probably a few people only have that much cash in their wallets. But I always have this sense of embarrassment, like a person knows that I have it. And so I always give it. So for a while, I even stopped carrying cash, because I just simply give it away when people ask for help. But back then in Russia, imagine 1992, 91, when it's impossible to buy boots for anybody, for adults, for children, especially for children. Luckily, my parents traveled a lot, and my father usually bought clothes for us and for even my children. And so I listened to this woman, and in my heart, that compassion, that impulse of love and giving and generosity, and also embarrassment. Oh my goodness, and my son of the same age has two boots. One pair he already wore, and same size boots he has, new ones that my father just bought from Moscow. And I looked at her, and of course, my tongue is already spitting it out. And I said, "Oh, you know what? My son has two pairs of boots. I will bring it to you." And of course, I did not give her the old ones. I gave her the new ones because I knew that you're supposed to give in the same way as you treat yourself, right? I won't want to get used pair of boots. I will want to have the new one. So I gave her the new pair of boots. My sister was absolutely angry. She said, "What are you thinking, Lydia? What will your son wear when it will be wet and it's winter and we have winter for 7 months? And this is when our boots are so soaked with this melting snow that it's impossible to dry them overnight." And so that's exactly what happened. And so later I've learned that, yeah, she was right. My son has no boots. And so I completely, totally understood what that woman was talking about. But again, now Hillel's wisdom. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And if I'm not for others, what am I? And if not now, when? It took me 30 years in ministry because sometimes I still do the same things. It's like I feel like I have more. But again, remember how the teachers were given? They were given enrich people from abundance. And that's what I could not understand, that abundance. And then when you have very limited resources, we feel like a widows that we need to give all. But let's review again the text. Is it something that we don't see here? Because calling his disciples, when Jesus saw this woman in verse 42, he how she put these two very small copper coins, worth, as the Bible says, translation here, only a few cents. In some other verses, I've read that it's just worth of 1 penny, what she had. But we also need to understand that it's as little as it is. This is all she had to sustain herself for a day. And then just Jesus says, "Truly I tell you," he said to his disciples, "this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on." So that's how we all want to act, and we want to act lovingly, and our heart, we feel like if we follow Jesus with our hearts, then we need to give just everything, and then God will provide, as I said in the beginning. Well, that's what I wanted to use this Hillel's teaching today, because if we follow Jesus with our hearts and we do not practice the same principle as we practice toward others, which is love your neighbor as you love yourself, then who will be for us when this difficult time, hardship will come? Of course, we think like, well, if we help others, they will come in a difficult time to help us. Yes, absolutely, but not always. So I will tell you a story about my administrative assistant back in St. Joseph. Her name was Carol. This is what charity is. You see, charity is giving absolutely altruistically, fully, passionately, compassionately. See, the word compassion is so wonderful. And so we give, especially to those, first of all, who are our loved ones, right? So in this particular case, Carol had a grandson. And one day she told me a story that her grandson often needed help for, he was running short, then he lost a job, and then she provided him support out of her very small income. And she was a part-time secretary or administrative assistant. And year after year after year, she was doing that. And then as soon as she helps, he will leave, and then comes back, and then again with this, "Grandma, help me, I'm hungry." And so every time she will give him some money, she will pay his debt. He will come back, and he lost a job again. He lost his house one day. Then he lost his marriage. And then finally she noticed one day that he started stealing from her. She noticed that a large amount of money that she had somewhere in a drawer was gone. So she confronted him, and her son got mad. He was so angry, and he says, "Grandma, I would never take money from you." And so she forgave him. Charity and toxic charity are two different things. You see, charity is when we give something to a person, and the person is very appreciative. And usually, this person later, when they feel better, they either bring something back or at least they say thank you. In this particular case, charity, that compassion that Carol showed and has been showing for many, many years, she realized that she does not see any change. Whatever he says, "Grandma, I love you, I will change, I will get back on my feet, and then I will give you money back," nothing was changing. But she continued supporting him. But she started having these doubts in her mind, like, is she doing right? How long does she supposed to support him, since actually at this time she was diagnosed with cancer. And when she had chemotherapy, she was getting weak, she started losing her hair. And then one day her grandson came, asked for money. She said, "Grandson, Andrew, I believe his name was, I don't have any. I can't give it to you because whatever I give to you, you spend." And he was a drug addict, and his addiction was growing. And so she suddenly realized she was feeding into that addiction. And the more she was doing that, the worse he was becoming. And so on one day he came and he threatened her because she did not give him any money. And that ended poorly because then she had to call the police. And then she filed restraining orders against her own son. And she asked me, "Pastor Lydia, I feel guilty about doing that." And then I told her about toxic charity. So again, let's see the comparison 41, 44 verses. The widow gave all she had. So Jesus does not commend her that she gave everything. He commends her for not giving recklessly, anxiously. So she was praised for following him with her heart. She gave from her heart. She gave it with purpose and dignity. And also, Jesus teaches us how to practice discernment. That heart that we have should follow, be connected to our brain. So with our modern understanding that heart is an organ and brain is another organ and they have different functions, but our emotions are flowing. And so when we have this impulse of, "Oh, I need to give away, I have compassion," there is something that is called discernment. And we cannot be true disciples if we do not respond to every need that we face every day around us, every day. And especially it's so obvious on the intersections or ramps when you exit the highway, wherever. There are so many people standing there, and charity. I remember how myself, I'm from Russia, I'm an immigrant. And in the beginning, I would stop at every ramp. As soon as I see a woman or a man with this sign, handmade, they don't even bother to maybe produce something more readable. But it's like, "I'm homeless, I'm hungry, um, I'm a veteran." And so, of course, I would stop and give a dollar out of my window. But then I started thinking, wait a second, I am an immigrant. I do not have that much money. I am a single woman. I was a single woman at that time, and I have a son who is at middle school. I don't have much money at all, and I was in seminary, and I worked part-time serving two churches. My sister actually was sending me some money. And so imagine, out of this very tiny income that I had, I would give a dollar, and then it hit me. How much money do you give away when you don't have enough money for yourself or for your son? So it's like, robbing myself, robbing my child, not sending money to my daughter when she was in college. I couldn't. But why would I give a dollar? And that's what, yes, our compassion and our altruism, they are aimed to relieve immediate suffering. Absolutely. So I don't say that do not do that. But every time you do that, do not continue that cycle of dependency, cycle of when you give and then people just take it, and then you give and they take it, and then it's like they're entitled. It's expected. And I also thought, like, if I raise my son and it's he works so hard, and our children, our daughters, our sons, they work so hard to get education, and then imagine they end out on the street and they just want and give and give and give money to those who do not want to change, who do not want to put efforts into their education, into changing their lifestyle. And so charity is motivated by a desire to show kindness and empathy, often reflecting a commitment to religious values. So let me tell you something. When I talk to people, I recently talked to a wonderful lady who loves cooking for the homeless and for the people who come to the door. She would always just drop everything and make a sandwich for them. Wonderful, wonderful. And so, what she told me when I started sharing these ideas about toxic charity, she says, "But Pastor Lydia, how come that we are Christians, we are called?" And she said, "When I do that, I don't expect a crown in heaven, but at least something," she said. You see, this is where I think not all of us, but some of us may be doing this work of mercy, works of mercy, and also serving and follow compassion. We may be somewhere in the back of of our minds. We count our points, like, oh, I hope that God will give us a crown when we end in heaven. And I said, why do you think that God wants you to do this? Why do you think God will not ask you Judy or another name, Mary? Do you remember the commandment I gave? And all this chapter, as I said, is actually an illustration of the greatest commandment. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with my whole heart, with the whole soul, with my whole mind, and my neighbor as thyself. And so I asked this particular lady a question. Do you think that the Lord will not ask you in heaven this question? Did you ask God that how do I serve my neighbor? How do I serve my neighbor with my whole heart? And how do I love God with my whole heart? And I said, what if God will tell you that there are different neighbors that you serve, not only those who are needed, who need food, but also those who live around. So the reason I even was inspired to have this teaching and this sermon, because last week we had a lady who came to the church, and we have a clothes in the church, and somehow she knew about it. So she came, and the women served her, helped her to find some clothes. And then she got outside. And by this time, I was called downstairs because our children from preschool could not enter into the playground because she parked her bike and her wagon with all kind of stuff right in front of the door. And so children are lined up on the staircase, and then it's kind of a jam, traffic jam, and it's not safe. So I got out and asked for her name, and she says, Vanessa. I said, Vanessa, could you please remove your bicycle? And so she promised she will. But then again, I was called downstairs, and she did not do anything. And then I was told that she's in a dumpster. And so I asked artificial intelligence, Chat GPT, to create this image, because this is exactly how she looked. She kind of had a fancy hat. She had nice outfit that she just received in our closet. And but she was, after an hour of shopping for clothes, she was inside of the dumpster looking for something. So I said, ma'am, can you please get out of the dumpster? And it's like for a moment, it felt like our roles were changed, because she said, give me a minute, like in that very, very authoritative tone of voice. So it's like making me wait. And so we waited, and then she got out, and she became very grumpy. She started complaining that she's here to get help, and we promised to get help, to give her help. So you see that dependency, and also she takes us for granted. She takes all this help like she's entitled to get it. And just because she lives on the street, we just have to jump out and we just have to stop our day. Children have to wait on the staircase. And then we just have to accommodate her needs to park her bike and then look for something in a dumpster. Um, I'm not sure how you think about it. What do you think about following Jesus with your heart? What do you think you do when you respond to a need like that? Would you put first your children? Would you put first your safety? Would you put first your well-being? I even asked that lady when she told me, asked me, not this Vanessa lady, but the woman, Christian woman, who strongly believes that as Christians we just need to give our last shirt and of course last penny. And she was telling me about how this lady, after we asked her to leave, she came to the door again, started ringing the doorbell and asking for more. And then I didn't know, but she actually made a sandwich for her. And that's what I wanted to come back to that slide with Hillel's saying. Hillel's wisdom, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And if I'm not for others, what am I? So I asked this question of this wonderful Christian woman. I said, but did you eat any sandwich when you make a sandwich for her? And of course, she did not. She kind of got silent. So that's what I thought. It's important to talk about how not to create dependency, how to also think about that law, love your neighbor as you love yourself. As I already admitted, I had many years to at least a little, to start getting a little understanding of the second part of the commandment: love your neighbor as you love yourself. That love yourself kind of always fall out. But also this time, looking around at this neighborhood, I realized that, those are also our neighbors. People who live in those houses, they are also our neighbors. So if we respond to the needs of people who live on the street, and we give away clothes and we give away food, they come more and then they demand more. And then we start having this problem with clothes thrown out. And then people sleep in the bushes. Then we have abandoned car on our parking lot. So I started feeling like we're losing control when we show compassion. So if we show compassion, it should come from the heart, and which it means in this particular particular case, that applying our wisdom, applying discernment, applying the vision for the church, also applying the teaching of Hillel and Great Commandment, first of all. And so again, Hillel's word challenges us to balance our resources, our personal, emotional, physical, and the psychological and spiritual resources, that at one point we do not get spiritually drained. I've been there many times, and this is not an attractive place to be. Trust me. So this is how people develop compassion fatigue. This is how people they just stop coming to church, because church always demands. But if you think about the neighbors, why would they come to churches around them that attract this crime to just is really becoming bad in Independence, Missouri? That's what I think. It should be in partnership, that all churches need to come together with the city and think about the problem that is polluting the whole community. It's not about just the church and an individual stopping at the door, but when we serve our free breakfast, like we call it, then 100 people come, and not all of them are homeless. Some of them really need help because they are low-income families. But again, along with them, we have these people who come, and in many cases, they're angry. They do not want to care for themselves. They do not help. And so that's a ministry that is we doing for them. You see, and that's not right. I do not believe in toxic charity. I believe in ministry that we do with the people to help them. And if they want to help themselves, then they need to get a way to get a job, training, to get not only clothes and a sandwich and a food once a month, but that's a program that just needs some focus and a purpose. And so, as the followers of Jesus, I think this last block is a little cut off. We are called to navigate this balance given with love and wisdom. So let's follow Jesus with our hearts. Let's follow Jesus with our hearts in a way that we apply wisdom, discernment, that first of all lifts up dignity in other people, in ourselves as well. It's not good when helpers are mistreated and get angry at, and that's not fair to anybody. But also the dignity of people we serve. It's not lifting them up. What the way we serve, uh, we need to be rooted in love, but also in wisdom, and what it means that we need to consider not only others, but consider ourselves again. Take care of yourself and show compassion to yourself. You know how when I do counseling, especially with children, I tell them, imagine your granddaughter or your child or your niece and how you hug them. And remember, when you hug them, then it's immediately generating a sense of safety and enjoyment. And that's what I want my people who come for to get counseling. I tell them, embrace yourself and just sense that circle of love and protection. And that's how I think we follow Jesus with the heart. It's like that oxygen mask that we are told on the airplane to put on our face first before we serve our child in the next on the next seat. But also that remember that saying: if you give a man a fish, then you feed him for a day. But if you teach a man how to fish, you feed them for life. And that's what I just I don't have much wisdom, I think, as a pastor. I don't think this message will be probably liked by all of you who listen, but I strongly believe that we should not drain ourselves. We should not be like Carol, who spent years and years and years helping her son, and then but simply draining out her spirit, her love for the grandson when she had to finally file restraining orders. I believe in love that is balanced, that yes, based on compassion, but it also based on purpose, balance, and love for yourself as well. So love your neighbors, that are not only those who are homeless, but also those who live around us. And so think about them, think about how the value of their houses decrease with everything that we give to the poor and bringing crime into the area, how we endanger them, endanger ourselves. So I have no answer. I just invite you to think about it. That's my invitation to you today. So what if we follow Jesus with our hearts? Put your hand here, ask yourself, how would you love your neighbor and how would you love yourself? So, again, I invite you to pray, embrace yourself, and have a wonderful day. See you next time.